My name's Calvin Reed. I'm a senior news editor at Publishers Weekly and the co-editor of PW Comics Week, PW's weekly email newsletter covering the comics industry. And we're here today to interview Mark Evanier, who's written an extraordinary biography of Jack Kirby, one of the great innovators and creative forces in the American comic book industry. The book that Mark has written is Jack Kirby, King of Comics, and it's a biography of this man who really is essentially invented the American comic book industry as we know it.
Someone was once asked to describe Irving Berlin's place in American music, and the person was asked said, Irving Berlin is American music. Jack Kirby kind of is comic books. This whole convention is full of Jack Kirby, every place. Even the books he didn't do were inspired by him for the most part. He was that cornerstone figure that if he wasn't your favorite artist, he was your favorite artist's favorite artist. And he inspired so many people, even people who did funny animals and did other kinds of comics. And he inspired people who were filmmakers. He inspired people who were artists and other kinds of things. His influence was just so wide. And I'm hearing, from doing the book, I'm hearing from all these people who you wouldn't think were inspired by Jack Kirby, coming up to me saying, oh yes, this is the guy that got me into whatever they're doing.
Can you tell us a little bit, what was he like as a person?
Well, Jack was a fascinating man. Jack had a mind that was strange to be around because he made odd connections, and a lot of his creativity came from putting together things that you or I would never think to put together, to juxtapose. And he talked the same way. Other people will talk to you and they go from A to B to C. Jack would start with A, then he'd go to R, then he'd come back and do E for a while, and then pretty soon he'd have you on beyond zebra. His brain didn't function in a linear manner, but somehow that brilliance translated onto the page. And as I look at Jack's work today, I can hear his voice behind everything I see of his, every story, every piece of artwork, and I can hear that amazing brain just kind of putting together these things because there was a world view. Jack had this big picture mentality that is the reason that there are no small Kirby drawings.
Some of the many characters that he invented. Maybe you could just go down a quick list. Obviously, the Fantastic Four.
Well, we always say co-created.
Of course. You're thinking, of course, of Stanley, his work with Stanley,
or other people,
and other
Simon.
people, including Joe Simon.
Captain America, of course, would be a number one on anybody's list.
Sure.
Fantastic Four, the Hulk, the X-Men, Thor, the Challengers of the Unknown, the New Gods, Darkseid. There's a lot of characters where Jack wasn't exactly the co-creator, but he was influential in the characters birthing, like Iron Man or Daredevil. Basically the whole Marvel universe. He was the architect of so much of that.
I think it was a year or two ago, the New York Times ran an editorial, and if I'm paraphrasing, but I think it basically said Jack Kirby is a genius. Something that we've all known.
The New York Times got one right.
Yeah, finally. Well, yes, that was my final question is, what was your response to that extraordinary editorial?
Well, I think that what I found with Jack was that Jack was almost always right. It took a while for the world to catch up with him sometimes, and that's my reaction as I look around. I go, well, you were right again, Jack, and people figure that out. His work has had a lasting quality. It's very valid. It's valid today. The things he said in 1970 about the world are valid today because they're essential truths. He was a very smart man, a very honest man too. I mean, Jack could get confused, but he was incapable of lying. It's one of the things that made writing about him so interesting because you had a guy whose life was an open record to those of us around him, and he used to tell me what was going on. He wanted me to be his historian, and I would take it all down and make notes and try to remember it, and I would cross-check, and he was very accurate. But also, I was just amazed at how the predictions and the views of people. Jack had an ability to look at someone and make a comment about the person's inner soul, and it held up. You could see how right he was about people that he came into contact with, and about the world around him. And that's why his work has endured, and why people are running around fascinated to get this book. And it's not because of me. You get a free ride, you do a book on Jack Kirby, you fill it full of Jack Kirby art, and people come up to me like, I've done something.